What's up, everybody? Axe Wizard here. Just finished my guards adventure for the Cairn system. Man, it was so much fun. So I want to give you all a story retelling of the escapades of my players. First things first, character creation. So in the adventure, each player starts with a uniform, which is brigandine armor, a sword, and some manacles. And then they randomize the rest of the character creation just like you normally would. I think I've said that in like 5 videos by now, but hey, whatever. Let's start with my youngest character. My youngest made a character, and he wanted to call it Jimbo. So he named his character Jimbo. Jimbo was towering build, so super tall. I think his build was like scrawny. He had like a very sunken face. He had curly hair, and that's all I can remember because I can't read his handwriting when I look at his character sheet. I got no idea what it says. So that was Jimbo. And then my oldest, his character, he named it Hurdy-Gurdy because at the time we went over to my friend's house to play, to introduce him to Cairn, and we started with the guards adventure, and he had like this old decorative like Hurdy-Gurdy. I don't think it was a real instrument. I think it was more decorative, but so he wanted my oldest called his character Hurdy-Gurdy, and Hurdy-Gurdy had an elongated face, luxurious hair. I think he had pockmarked skin. I remember him and my friend's character Harper had a lot of similarities. So that was his character, Hurdy-Gurdy. And then my friend rolled a character. He rolled a name. He just rolled a last name. He rolled Harper. So Harper, we call him Harper the Hunter because his background was hunter, and he used that quite a bit. And his traits were he was also scrawny. He also had a long face or elongated face. I think he also was pockmarked. And then, except his hair was not luxurious. It was wispy. So that was Harper the Hunter. So Jimbo, Hurdy-Gurdy, and Harper start out the adventure by, doing the introduction where they swear in. They get briefed by Lieutenant Vandal and Captain Geberick about their duties. They take the Protector's Oath, and then they're shown to their barracks where they get to rest before they get assigned their first assignment, which is going to be a night shift patrol. So when they get their first patrol, they're assigned to the Market District. So this was a really cool introduction for my friend who played Harper because I think he played a little bit of D&D back in the day, but it's been quite a few years since he messed with any tabletop stuff. So when I persuaded him to try out the Cairn system, the first session he was kind of nervous because it was like he said, I don't really know any of the rules or anything. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. We'll learn as we go. It's not that complicated of a system. Basically, you just tell me what you want to do. If there is some sort of reason why you should be able to do something, you just do it. If it's something that's got a bit of risk involved, you just make a save for it. He's like, oh, okay. So we started playing. And from the moment we did character creation, he loved it. We had a great time. I think every play session, our faces hurt from smiling and laughing so much. It was so much fun. So once they're shown to their barracks and they're sort of like on downtime until their first patrol, the adventure gives players a little bit of time to like role play if they want, or they can go to the market and purchase other equipment if they don't feel like they started out with good stuff. So the very first thing that Harper does is he wants to walk up to some of the other guards. He basically was like, "Sup, dudes? I'm about to go on my first patrol. I just want to make sure that like I've got everything I need." And then he starts reading off everything in his inventory. So I've got like a torch. I got like some marbles. I got a sponge. Just starts listing off some of the randomized stuff that he got. And from that moment on, it was fun. Like it was just good times. All the players were engaged. It's keeping me on my toes because I had to keep, improving dialogue with various people. So super fun. Loved it. Then once nightfall hits and it's their time, their assignment gets posted, and then they go to the Market District. So they patrol the Market District. The very first harmless scenario I threw at them was they hear a sound, and then when they go investigate, it's just a stray animal. Harper tries to like throw marbles at it because one of his items he got was marbles. There was a tired shopkeeper that was leaving late. They basically accosted this guy and was just antagonizing him and like, you know, why you out so late? Like, are you a burglar? Just up on his face. Just really making the guy uncomfortable. There were some street kids that were out after curfew. They basically told him like, get out of here before I call your parents and stuff like that. And then I threw the main scenario at it, which was they would come across a burglar. So the way I spun it is that the burglar was just basically on a rooftop. So they hear a noise and like some dust or rocks or something like that like fell in front of their path, and they kind of look up and they see a shadow up there. They immediately start thinking about how they're going to get up there. Now, Hurdy-Gurdy had a grappling hook. Now, for ease of use, I just say the grappling hook is also attached to rope, because we're not playing Pathfinder where you have to have everything itemized and, oh, it's going to take an action to take out the grappling hook and another action to take out the rope and another action to, you know, be able to make a crafting check to be able to tie the rope on the grappling hook. No, we're not doing that. Just, they already had it. So Hurdy-Gurdy throws up this grappling hook. I just have him make a dex save to see if it stays. He succeeds. He starts climbing up the rope. Jimbo finds the other rope that the burglar was using, so he just starts climbing up that. And then Harper the Hunter followed soon after. So once the boys were on the roof and they could see the burglar, they were gonna chase him. Now, my youngest, who played Jimbo, one of his randomized items he had was a fishing pole. Now, his plan was he wants to Minecraft him. And what that meant is, like, in Minecraft, you can use your fishing pole, and if you attach the hook on an enemy, you can yank them towards you. He wanted to do that, so I had to make a dex save to see if he could cast. Ended up digging the hook in the guy's thigh, stopping him, and then Hurdy-Gurdy came running up and had a torch, and he kept trying to beat him with the torch to catch him on fire. I don't know why he wanted to do that, but that's what they wanted to do. So I ended up beating him with a torch, catching his dark clothing on fire just a little bit. And then at the time, Harper the Hunter rolled up, and they were all able to basically dogpile on him, and they were able to secure him. This was early on when I was still writing the adventure, so at the time they didn't have manacles and stuff, so they were able to take out like some twine or something and basically tie the guy up. And then they brought him back in. Also, at the time when they did this, I didn't implement the cryptic letter yet, so they didn't mess with that until later on in the adventure. But yeah, that was their first patrol. It was just kind of cool, throwing some harmless scenarios at them. Harper really liked just how easy it was to just, you know, say what you want to do, and then if it's feasible, if you have a reason, you should be able to do it. You just do it. Really fun. Even though we didn't roll as many dice as we would with Pathfinder or D&D, still had a good time. But yeah, during that market district, when they were trying to bring down the burglar, they were asking him questions like, what's his name? He tried to lie and say his name was Henson Halmore, and they weren't buying it. And then when they were searching him, they also found the stolen merchandise, and they were trying to figure out what to do with that. They didn't know if they should try to find the shop to where it was stolen from and return it. They didn't know whether they should keep it for themselves and maybe try to find a buyer for it and make a little bit extra money on the side, or if they should just turn it in to somebody at the barracks and just have them deal with it. What they ended up doing is they ended up just bringing it back with them along with the burglar, and they just turned it into the duty office. So there was a fun conversation though. They were pretty close to just taking it and trying to find a buyer for it, which was pretty fun. So then they get some downtime. Now, during their downtime, since they just worked night and now they have all day before their next night shift, they went to the markets. So many things happened that first trip to the markets. I think Jimbo really wanted a helmet. For some reason, he really wanted a wolf helmet, but it doesn't really go with the uniform of a guard, so he settled for some other helmet. Hurdy-Gurdy was looking for an actual instrument, like an actual hurdy-gurdy. So that was kind of fun. And ended up actually Jimbo, I think, bought the hurdy-gurdy instead. Harper wanted to go find a cobbler to get a new pair of shoes, because he's like, you know what, I'm like patrolling, dude, my feet hurt so much, these shoes suck, I want some comfortable shoes. So he went and just bought some new shoes. It didn't really do anything, but you know, throughout the scenario, we kind of reference it every now and then, like, oh yeah, well, you've got those comfy shoes, so running after these bad guys isn't really that that big of a deal. So it was kind of cool. There's nothing that really even went on the character sheet. Like, it didn't take up an inventory slot because it's just part of your outfit. But yeah, super fun. But they were also just kind of going through, and I think Harper ended up just visiting a general shop and then buying some repellent. In the Cairn rules, it doesn't say what it's for. It just says repellent. So like everybody can be repelled by it. So that's fun. But they ended up trying to like swindle this merchant. And during their haggling process, they tried letting it slip that, oh yeah, we're friends of Henson Halmore, so you should give us a discount. Well, the merchant they were talking with apparently was acquainted with Henson Halmore, and they weren't buying it, and they sort of ended up raising their price because of it. So once they were done there, when they got back to the barracks, Harper went to the duty office and said, hey, look, I don't have any evidence, but I'm pretty sure this one merchant, the one they were trying to swindle, I'm pretty sure they're doing some shady stuff. I would just, keep them on a watch list or something like that. So the duty officer's like writing it down and got him on a watch list, which was super fun. Unfortunately, I forgot in later episodes that happened because we only played for like 2 or 3 hours at a time, and I think we had like 4 or 5 sessions throughout a period of a few months, and I just forget some things, But that was pretty funny. I think Harper bought a helmet too. Yeah, so I think Harper also bought a helmet. I think Jimbo was also I think he bought a separate weapon. I think his background was blacksmith, so he kept wanting to go to the blacksmith and like forge his own weapon. So I think I let that happen. That might have been a different adventure. But anyway, I know that Jimbo was at one point like dual wielding a sword and a mace. So he was dual wielding. Thought that was pretty cool. Had like a helmet with like the visor that clapped down and just dual wielding weapons. So he was a menace. So once they did all that, they went back to the barracks, rested up, and then they went on their second patrol, which was the residential district at night. So during that, I had them investigate, I threw a few harmless things at them, like a drunkard that was shambling home. They ended up kind of picking on him a little bit. There was someone that like was emptying a chamber pot out the window and almost dumped a bunch of feces on them. They almost went up there and they almost like broke into the house and was going to start beating people's asses, but they decided not to. There was a tired baker that was leaving their house before dawn. They didn't even do anything with that, which is fine. And then there were 2 neighbors that were arguing over a barking dog, and I think their solution was to basically just like, well, we could take out the dog if you want. It didn't make anybody happy. And then while they were figuring out what to do with that, they hear someone screaming for help, and then a naked man is seen running at them. And watching their faces trying to figure out just what the hell was going on was priceless. So I had the naked man, who was Thidrek, was running at them with a bundle of clothes, just like, help, he's gonna kill me, help. And so they had Thidrek like get behind them like they were gonna protect him, and then they saw this angry man named Kandak, whose wife Aleda was just wearing nothing but a bed sheet, trying to restrain him, like frantically screaming, stop, it was nothing, I still love you. And then the man is just in a rage, like a drunken rage. And he was coming to kill Thidrek because apparently he came home and found this man in bed with his wife, and he was not having it. So what ended up happening there is once they found out what was going on, their first instinct is they were just going to stand aside and they were just going to let Kandak murder Thidrek right then and there. And then I was like, I'll let you do it, but as guards, you know that you'd be witnessing a murder and you would still have to arrest them. And they're like, oh yeah, well I guess we should probably stop this, huh? So what ended up happening, I think Thidrek ran away, and then Kandak attacked them because they were trying to stop him from chasing him. And then so they ended up getting in a fight with Kandak, and then because Kandak was under attack, Aleda was also trying to attack the guards, but they didn't really want to hit a naked woman. Or a woman clad only in a linen bed sheet. So what ended up happening is my youngest Jimbo, dual wielding with his helmet down, was like doing his dual wield thing, just smacking the crap out of Kandak. And Harper takes out his bag of marbles and throws it on the ground, and then everybody has to make dex saves to avoid falling over, and basically everybody just ends up failing, including Thidrek, who was still running. Somehow the marbles got over there too. Harper was like, can I throw it in a way to where like it gets us but also him too? I was like, make a dex save. Well, he succeeded, and it just so marbles wiped everybody out. So they ended up having like a impaired combat where everyone's trying to swing their weapons on the ground. They ended up arresting both Kandak and Aleda and Thidrek. They just bagged them all up, escorted them back to the barracks, turned them all in. But watching them try to figure out what to do with like a naked man running and then a scantily clad woman in a bed sheet with a drunk angry dude was pretty fun. So once they complete that, they're given their 5 gold, they're on downtime. They don't really have anything they wanted to do at the time, so they just rested and continued on to the next patrol, which was the Dockside District. Now, when they did this, I don't think this really went to plan at all. It started out, my youngest was just sort of looking for a fight. Like, Jimbo wanted to brawl. So I made sure that the players knew that's like, hey, this is a pretty rowdy district, so you might see things like fist fights and stuff like that, and that's perfectly legal, but if you see people using weapons trying to kill each other, that's obviously not legal. So you probably need to step in for that. Well, the first fight, they were like, okay, well, let's kind of patrol around and see if we can check out any fights. Maybe I want to place some bets. You know, Harper was wanting to bet on people, and Jimbo wanted to actually get in there and fight somebody. So they rolled up on this rowdy tavern, and there was a fist fight going on. And then once it was done, Jimbo gets in the ring with his helmet still down and his 2 weapons out. Who wants to go? And like everyone's kind of backing up, and the innkeeper's like, yo, this is just for like fisticuffs, my man. So Jimbo puts his weapons away. It's like, all right, I'll fight the best guy here. You know, Jimbo was thinking he was pretty good because he had 2 armor and he had the helmet and his brigandine and stuff like that. So had a big guy come out and fist fight, and holy cow, Jimbo had simultaneously the best and the worst rolls I've ever seen. So whenever he would make an attack roll, because you're doing unarmed, it's 1d4. Well, he kept rolling 1s. The other guy kept rolling like 4s. So quickly, I think at the time, Jimbo only had like 2 hit protection. So he quickly went down to 0. He got a scar. I think that was like the only time I've ever done scars right, up until I finally figured it out. I kept mistakenly having him roll for a scar every time he took strength damage, which wasn't the way to do it, but he ended up just basically having the worst rolls on his scars anyway, so he never even got any more hit protection out of it. So it's not like it ended up mattering in that case, but every time he would try to punch somebody, he would just roll a 1. And every time he would get hit, he'd get hit for like the max damage. Of course, he had 2 armor, which mitigated it. Eventually he kept going down on his strength. Now his strength was only 9 to begin with. By the time he got done with that fight, his strength was down to 3. He kept succeeding on his strength saves to keep fighting every time he took damage to his strength. Every time he get punched, he would get his strength knocked down again, then he has to make a strength save, and he kept rolling like 1s, 2s, and 3s like the entire time and just kept fighting. Eventually just beat the crap out of the guy. Once the guy got his hit protection down and he took damage to his strength, he failed his first strength save, and the dude had like 14 strength. So yeah, that was an interesting encounter. So Jimbo was already on the brink of death. Like, he's got 3 strength left, no hit protection. They rest up a little bit. He regains his whole whopping 2 hit protection, but he's still severely wounded. He's still got 3 strength left. If he goes down to 0, he dies. So I don't think he grasped the danger he was in, but I was letting him play it how he wanted to. So they continue on their patrol. You know, I threw a few harmless scenarios at them after that. So there was some drunken sailors stumbling around. There's like someone passed out in the street. They ended up like kicking him to wake him up and like shoved him to the side of the street, like just totally being belligerent for some reason. Like for some reason they just wanted combat, so they were making every scenario combat. And then they come up to the main event for this patrol, where there's two men, Rodolph and Naren, who are fighting with blades. They're basically dueling, and Rodolph is pretty wounded. So they see this happening, and Jimbo rushes in, not even caring that he's on the brink of death, whips out his 2 weapons, runs in, and just shouts, "Hey, knock it off, or you're gonna have to deal with me." And they both kind of look at him, and they're just kind of thinking about what to do. They end up just kind of separating them, questioning them, talking about what happened, what was going on, what was the purpose of of fighting. They ended up just, I think they ended up just letting them both go. Like, I don't think they arrested anybody. I don't think that they even fought. Like, I think that they just chatted with him and then just told him to knock it off and be safe and then let him go. So that's not how I expected that to go at all. But that's how it played out. And then they were on downtime again. They didn't really have anything that they wanted to do, so they just rested up, proceeded right next to the next duty, only to find out that Lieutenant Vandal was going to give them a special assignment. Lieutenant Vandal basically told them, like, hey, I was going to assign you the slums tonight, but something else came up. You guys are going to rest until morning, and then you're going to report over to the tax and excise office, and you're going to talk to a guy named Markomir, and he's going to send you on a mission to find a missing tax collector. So this mission was super fun. They had a great time with it. They were issued a mule to carry stuff back. They were given like tents and stuff like that. So they were all like, oh yeah, we're just gonna go on a big camping trip. So they went out, they talked to Markomir. My youngest was trying to be really sassy with Markomir, and that did not go over well. Markomir basically chewed his ass out. Once they were done with their initial briefing with Markomir, they were going back to the barracks to like get their inventory all ready for the journey, and then Gebrick just busts in the room and just points at Jimbo and says, "You, my office right now!" And then Jimbo got his ass chewed by Captain Gebrick because Markomir basically talked to Captain Gebrick and said, "Hey, one of your guys is being a jackass. Better talk to him." So that wasn't very fun. So then everybody has a deep-seated hatred of Markomir now. For good reason. So they go on this investigation to find out what happened to this missing tax collector. Basically, Markomir is like, dude, this guy's name is Bragan. I'm pretty sure he's a shady individual. I bet he stole it. If you can bring me proof of it, I'll pay you a big fatty bonus. So the players start off towards Clerg. You know, they're asking around. Harper was playing it really smart. He's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I want you guys to wait out here by the mule. I'm gonna change out of my uniform, and I'm just gonna wear like some plain clothes, and then I'm just gonna walk in and start talking to people. So Harper walks in, starts chatting up the innkeeper, and it's basically like I forgot how he did it, but it was so brilliant. He was just was basically complaining about how taxes are such a pain, and the innkeeper was opening up, and like other people around him was like, yeah, and that bastard Bragan keeps taking all our money and stuff like that. So he ended up getting like all the information like right then and there, just playing it cool, just going undercover. Once he got everything they needed, they basically found out that Bragan had already collected all the taxes in Clerg, and he had already departed for Onstead. They decided to just hoof it through the night. They're like, yeah, we're not going to camp. We're just going to catch up and find him. Harper was trying to use his like hunter skills to like keep an eye out to see if they could find any tracks deviating from the path. And, you know, there was a fun thing where it's like they found animal tracks and stuff like that. They didn't really pursue that, but they didn't see any human tracks that were deviating from the main path. So they made their way to Onstead, and they got there during sunrise. So at this point, I made them all deprived because they weren't able to rest, but they didn't really seem to care. They started talking around there, and they basically talked to the innkeeper. Harper did his thing where he was kind of undercover again, and the innkeeper basically said like, yeah, well, Bragan hasn't, I saw him in town, but he hasn't stopped by for his customary flagon of ale before leaving, and he usually brags about everything and, you know, demeans my patrons and all that stuff, and I haven't seen him since like a day or two ago. So they start going around to every business and seeing, hey, have you had taxes collected from you yet? And at first they were kind of like, hey, maybe we should collect the taxes and make a little bit of extra money on the side. But they decided not to, since everything had to be on a ledger. They didn't really want to screw people over any more than they already were being. So they're just like, we'll just leave them. So they ended up finding out that basically like half the people had already had taxes collected from them, and then the other half was wondering like when Bragan was going to show up because he hadn't stopped by yet. And then they overheard the little juicy detail that the hunter Ardveg was able to afford a cure for his wife Helva, and they were kind of like, well, I wonder where he got the money, because the cure was pretty expensive, but I guess it's none of our business. So then they ended up asking around. They ended up actually finding Ardveg's house, and the way that I played it was that Helva was actually there just resting, like she was feeling better. They were asking where her husband was, and well, he's probably up doing hunting. He has a camp, you know, just over the slope of that mountain over there. So they went and they Harper ended up using his hunter background to find game trails and find trails to find this guy's camp. Well, they found Ardveg, and the way that I played Ardveg was he didn't want any trouble. All he wanted to do was just care for his wife. And so when the guards showed up, he basically instantly knew what they wanted. And so he's like, yeah, I did it. I only did it. I only took what I needed to afford the medicine for my wife. I'll show you where I disposed of him, but please let me go. I just couldn't stand it. Bragan had basically was just being a dick to him at the worst time. It just picked a bad day for Ardveg, and Ardveg just popped off and just off the dude. So they ended up like kind of agreeing with Ardveg, like, yeah, this guy was a scumbag from what we've heard, and it sounds like you did the world a favor, to be honest. Just show us where you left him. So Ardveg led him right to it, and they let Ardveg go. They're like, yeah, just thanks, man. We'll take it from here. Don't worry about it. So Ardveg happily went about his business, and they went to work counting all the gold and seeing what was there, and they had a big debate about what to do. They were almost thinking that they could take everything and like run, and of course I was going to let them do it if they wanted to, but then they decided not to. So then they were kind of trying to do a divvy up the 237 extra gold that was basically there. They ended up taking 50 of that and putting it back into the missing lockbox, because there was 2,195 gold, but the tax ledger says there's supposed to be 2,245 gold. So they basically threw in 50 from the extra stash that Bragan had been ripping off people, and they split up the remaining 187 amongst themselves. And they had a good time. So they brought everything back. Markomir was pretty happy. They also brought back the corpse of Bragan too. I don't remember what they were thinking with that. As soon as they brought it in the office, Markomir was just disgusted. Like, oh, just to get rid of that. And I don't remember what they did with the body. I think they just carried it back to the duty office and just had the duty officer take care of it. But I don't think that they ended up getting the bonus from Markomir. They weren't able to produce any proof of like his wrongdoing. They were just able to just say hearsay about how he was robbing people. And my youngest blurted out that, oh yeah, he had a bunch of extra money on him, and everyone's like, no, don't tell him. He's like, what? Markomir's basically like, fine, I don't care about extra money. I only care about what was on the ledger. So that's how I played it. I probably could have played that a little bit differently. I'm sure Markomir was greedy enough. He probably could have just ordered them to be searched and seized, but it was just because my youngest blurted it out, and I didn't want to punish him for that. So I just let it slide. So after this adventure, they had a bunch of money, so they all wanted to go on a big shopping spree. Jimbo, he sold his helmet, he sold his sword, kept the mace, and he wanted a full set of plate mail armor. I think that was like 50 gold or something. He paid it. And then everybody was asking about, like, is there a magic shop somewhere? Like, can we buy like spell books or magical items? So I tried saying like, well, you know, spells are like magic and stuff's pretty rare in this world, but you know, there might be some place that's got something. So I started went to a shop, and I wasn't really I didn't know if I should actually have a bunch of spell books or if I should just look up a cool, like, fun, wacky relics to have them use. So I looked up some relics on the Cairn site, and the ones that we chose was Hurdy-Gurdy ended up getting a shovel that I think it had like 5 charges or something like that. When you activate a charge for 10 minutes, you're able to shovel rock as though it was dirt. So he thought that was pretty cool, so he bought that magic shovel. Harper bought this rope that was like a magic rope, and basically it'll tie itself in like an impossible knot, and then when you want to tug on it to release it, it'll just come undone. And I think it has like 5 charges, or maybe it was 3 charges, and then whenever you want to recharge it, you have to cut off 5 feet of the rope. So it's got a limited life because the rope just gets shorter and shorter. He bought that magic rope, thought that was pretty cool. And then Jimbo, there was this weird egg that I found. Yeah, so the item that I found was called Bird Bomb. Only has 1 charge. It's a fragile egg that releases an incredible stench that makes all folks around it vomit. And then to recharge it, you have to bury the shell of the egg in a grave, and then the next morning there'll be 3 more eggs there. So he wanted that really bad. So here he is carrying the stink egg, trying not to break it, in a full suit of plate mail. Somehow he managed to get it back in the barracks. They were debating about what to do. I think Hurdy-Gurdy ended up giving Jimbo his sponge, and they were able to like cut a hole in it and like, you know, make a nice little safe spot for the egg. That was their day. They got some magic items, and then they were ready to go to the next mission. So then they get the slums district. They weren't really too excited about the slums district after the cool tax collector investigation, but they went with it. This was probably our longest session because they were just doing like their own thing. As soon as they're on patrol, they were thinking like, oh, there's a bunch of poor people around here. Maybe we can hire them to do stuff. So everybody was trying to think like, hey, what if we just hire a poor person to take this egg to go to a graveyard to break it and then take the shells and then just bury them in someone's grave, so there'll be 3 more eggs. And they were thinking about like making like this stink egg production scheme where they would just have poor people just planting these shells in graves and constantly stinking everything up. And it's like, yeah, we'll pay you a gold to do it. They were almost doing that, but Jimbo had left his egg in the barracks. He didn't want to bring it with him on this patrol in case he broke it. So that all kind of fell through when he was like, oh, well, I don't know when we're next going to be back here though. So it's not like we can keep paying these guys because we might be on a patrol or something elsewhere. So they decided not to do that. They were almost to the point where they were going to try to organize some sort of like bum fights tournament, like just basically pay a bunch of poor people to fight, and then like, you know, if you win you get like a bonus. They were thinking about doing that, and they were I think they were starting to try to organize that when I had the cut purse try to take Harper's coin purse. Now what happened here I did not expect. I was expecting like a high-speed chase. No, what happened is I told Harper like, you feel a slight tug on your hip, and Harper was like, I immediately draw my sword and swing. I'm like, okay. So I had to make a dexterity save to see if he could do it fast enough. He succeeded, and I told him like what it was. He's like, okay, well, as I'm swinging, I want to cut the guy's hand off. Okay. So this pickpocket cut purse guy has his coin purse and instantly loses his hand, starts screaming bloody murder. They ended up like, I think one of them like applied a tourniquet to his arm to like stop bleeding. Basically made a makeshift tourniquet out of like some rope and a stick or something. Then convinced him to like calm him down, and then as they were doing that, Graldar, another one of the cut purse's victims, came up and was like, oh, you guys already dealt with him. I just want to collect my money he stole from me. So they let Graldar search him, didn't find any money, and then Graldar kind of looked at the 3 guards and decided that since they already cut this dude's hand off, probably didn't want any trouble with him. So Graldar decided to just get the hell out of there. So now they had this cut purse guy, and so they start interrogating this cut purse guy, and I'm sitting here like spitballing, trying to improv reasons why this guy's a cut purse, and it's like, oh, I just have to rob people just to make ends meet. It's nothing personal, mister, and stuff like that, you know. And what they ended up getting out of it is that, oh, there must be some cartel or something here that's like running everything, keeping these people poor. So we want to find out where everyone is that's oppressing these poor people. So they ended up finding this camp in the slums, this like rundown sort of cul-de-sac where this den of bad guys are, and they threw down there. And that was nuts because that did not go the way that I expected. Jimbo ran in with his mace, charged straight at the leader because he was tanky, just attacked immediately. Harper took out his magic rope and he's like, I want to lasso like everybody. I want to like throw it and try to wrap as many people around as I can. I'm like, okay, let's try it. So I had to make a dexterity save to see if he could, throw it right. He did. And then I had everybody who he was trying to tie up, I had everybody make a dexterity save. So like the first guy managed to duck, so the rope kept traveling, got to the leader and also Jimbo. I had both of them make saves. Jimbo succeeded. I think the leader succeeded. The rope kept passing over and went to the last guy who failed, and it basically wrapped around him and tied him up, and he couldn't move. So Harper had that guy, and then Hurdy-Gurdy, at first he was like, what's the ground like? Is it like dirt or like cobblestone? I'm like, yeah, it's it's cobblestone. He's like, can I use my shovel to try to shovel rocks at people? And I'm just like, yeah, do it. That's awesome. So hurdy-gurdy fires up his shovel, starts digging this cobblestone like it's dirt. And of course, once he shovels it, he basically like catapults it at people. Once it leaves the shovel, it turns back to rock. So he's basically shoveling these huge rocks at people. Like he's got like a damn trebuchet back there just lobbing rocks at people. I was like, I thought that was so cool that I ended up making his attacks enhanced because they were so surprised. The next round of combat, once Jimbo sees that one guy is tied up with a rope, what he does is he goes over there and he doesn't attack them. He starts like pulling on their ears and stuff. So he starts tugging on this guy's ears, which I just for fun, like, yeah, I'll say that's an unarmed attack. That does 1d4 damage. Go ahead and roll damage. And they ended up keeping him alive. The other guy starts rushing at hurdy-gurdy, who's just lobbing shovelfuls of rocks at people. Anyway, they ended up taking out the other guy. The leader is squaring up with Jimbo again, or somebody, and this was so chaotic I almost forgot this part. Holy cow. So the original guy that Harper had lassoed with his rope, his magic rope, I think he ended up passing out. Harper released his rope, ended up roping the boss. And while the boss was roped, on their next turn, what they ended up doing, Jimbo pantsed him, hurdy-gurdy pushed him, and then Harper made a table behind the guy and basically made him fall over. I don't know why they wanted to do that, but it was amazing, and I'm so glad they did. It was so dumb. So they had the leader roped up, pantsed, and they have the other guy unconscious. Yeah, so they have one guy dead, one guy unconscious, and then the boss is bound pretty low. Like he's not going to be up for much longer. He can't do anything because he's tied up with this magic rope. And at this point, the other poor people start kind of coming out once they see that this big guy has been taken down. For some reason, Harper was like, stay back, there's sickness and plague. They were worried about being overwhelmed by the poor people, so they basically just told them like, oh, there's sickness and plague. And they ended up just basically leaving and letting the poor people have it at this guy, and they just ripped him apart basically. So they just left it, went back to their barracks, didn't say a peep of any of that to the duty officer. Like, oh yeah, there was a cut purse, he tried to steal our stuff, we ended up getting him. I think they actually took the cut purse back with them, because the cut purse ended up leading them to this place. Sorry, it's so jumbled. It was so hectic and just helter-skelter. It was nuts. So that was Slums District. That didn't go any way, that didn't go at all like I thought it would be. They almost employed people to make a stink egg production business. They almost hosted a bum fights tournament, and then they ended up like beating this dude who was keeping poor people down. So they felt pretty good about that. They felt pretty good about using their new magic stuff, minus the stink egg, of course, but the rock shovel and the magic rope were pretty awesome. That was a big hit. So once they get back to the duty office, Lieutenant Vandal catches them and says, look, I'm sorry to do this to you guys, but I'm gonna have to have you work a double. Sends them over to the main gate. So once they get to the main gate, they were feeling pretty belligerent. So once they relieved the guards there, and they were given a brief of like, look, search anybody who's coming in. You can deny entry to anybody if you get a bad feeling about them, and if you get a Cairn that wants to speak to the manager, you just wake up Lieutenant Connor in the gatehouse, and he'll sort it out. Okay, cool. So once they were officially on duty there, they're like, should we just close the gate and just go take off to the market district? And they were almost going to do that, but they decided to keep the gate open. They decided to just do it the right way. They were so close to closing that gate and just piss it off. It was great. So I threw a few harmless scenarios at him. You know, there's a legitimate trader with a donkey laden with goods. They search him, and they were all like, what's in the bags? And the merchant's like, oh, just, simple goods and sundries to sell at the market. And they ended up like wanting to know what type of goods and sundries. So I was like, he's got like some spices and like perfumes and stuff. And so hurdy-gurdy was like, I want to pop the stoppers on every one of these perfumes and try it. The merchant was like indignant, like, oh, you're depreciating the value of my goods. And they're like, is this official city guard business, sir? Stand over there. there was a group of farmers that were coming through from Claire to get supplies. They just let them right in. They didn't even bother searching. Like, yeah, come on in, boys. Okay. There was a newcomer to the city, and it started asking the players for directions, and it was like, oh, good sir, is this the city of Imgen? And my youngest Jimbo was like, no, this is the city of Jorgen. I don't know what you're talking about, Imgen. And the guy's like, well, that's not on my map anywhere. Well, you better get a better map. This is Jorgen. Where are the goods and services in this town? They ended up pointing him like towards the slums. Like, yeah, if you go down to the left over there, there's like a really good inn down there. Just totally messing with the guy. There was a pompous man who showed up who refused to be searched, demanded to speak with the supervisor, got Lieutenant Connor involved, set him straight. They ended up searching him, and they almost attacked an official courier that was galloping towards the gate. They stopped him and searched him. And then for the main event, there's a merciless merchant that they encounter, and the merchant attempted to bribe them with 25 gold, and they were instantly suspicious. And they refused it and just told him to stand aside so that they can conduct their search. So the man stood aside, was just really angry. They weren't searching him yet. They wanted to search the goods first. So Hurdy-Gurdy was up in the back of the wagon, and I told him that there's there's a few barrels of ale in there. There's some foodstuffs. There's like soap and things like that. And he's like, I want to pop the tops of these barrels, and I want to try every one of these ales. So they just pop the top of these barrels, and they're like sitting there drinking, and then they're like, yeah, I'm not even gonna put the tops of them back on. I'm just gonna leave them undone and just mess up the back of his cart and stuff like that. So they made a mess of things back there. I think they even took some of his food and just ate it. And then they noticed there was a space underneath the wagon, and they found this crate that was suspended by rope on the bottom, and Harper got underneath and slashed the ropes and dropped the crate on the ground, and then all the weapons spilled out. And then right away the merchant attacks. Now fortunately for him, Jimbo was the guy who was staying with the merchant, and Jimbo is wearing a full set of plate armor, so he has max armor of 3 armor. Now this merchant has a poison dagger, but he kept rolling 1s and 2s and 3s on every attack. Never even touched Jimbo. So no poison effect there, no willpower saves, nothing. They ended up just beating the crap out of this guy, finding his cryptic letter. That's when I introduced the cryptic letters. I also kind of did a retcon for them and said, hey, it wasn't in the adventure then, but when you guys first encountered that very first burglar, you guys also found a cryptic letter on them. And I just mentioned how when you showed it to the duty officer, they kind of shrugged and tossed it on the desk. So they grabbed another cryptic letter. This time Harper wanted to make a copy of it, so I had to make a dex save, or maybe it was a willpower save, to see if they could copy it to the best of their ability. Yeah, they ended up looting his gold, took that for themselves. I'm trying to remember what they did with him. I honestly don't remember what they did with the merciless merchant. I don't remember if they kept him alive and arrested him, or if they just killed him. Either way, they took everything back to the duty office. Lieutenant Connor was waking up by the commotion. The guards were sent to relieve them, show up, and they assume guard of the main gate. And then Lieutenant Connor sends them back to the barracks with all the stuff to report to the duty office. So they turned in the merchant and his poison dagger and stuff like that, but they kept the gold. But they also turned in the cryptic letter, which the duty officer added to a growing pile of those. So they started getting kind of suspicious about that. They got an additional bonus for working a double. They got paid. They were happy, so they rested up. And the next mission was the search and seizure mission. So they were super excited about this one. They had a really good time with this. So one thing to note that I forgot to mention during character creation is that Harper rolled a spell book, and the spell book that he got, it was number 54, Mirror Walk. A mirror becomes a gateway to another mirror that you looked into today. So what Harper did when he was at the markets, he bought these 2 handheld mirrors, and I had completely forgotten that he had a spell book because he immediately just stashed it in his barracks and never used it. By the time we get to the search and seizure, this is our 4th or 5th session already. And so it had been a month or 2 since we did character creation. So we were already I already forgot about this damn spell book. He bought mirrors, he stashed them in his barracks too, but for this mission, he used them. So let me explain what happened, because they basically circumvented this entire encounter. They get told that they have a special mission. Lieutenant Vandal comes in and just says, hey, I got something special for you. Brings in this guy named Ervig, who's investigating all these cryptic letters. Basically says, we're going to be doing a smash and grab operation on this safe house in the slums. I want you guys to watch my back. So we're going to travel light, because we got to bring stuff out of there. So make sure you guys travel light. So they're doing their preparations. Everyone's like putting stuff away, like, oh, I guess I'll leave my shovel here. And so Harper takes a mirror, looks in it, sets it in his barracks room, takes the other mirror, throws it in his pack, and takes the book of Mirror Walk, throws it in his pack. So they all go out. Ervig is like basically saying, hey, look, we got to play this super cool. Once we get to the edge of the slums, we're going to have to run for it, because otherwise they're going to know we are coming. So they get to this inn on the edge of the slums, which is closed because it's morning time. So Ervig tells them to make a show of like looking and checking for signs of vandalism, and then meet him out back. They all go separate ways around the inn, converge on the back side, and Ervig basically says, all right, this is it. Time to go. Weapons out, sprint. And then they just start running. And as soon as they start running into the slums, people are screaming, they're coming, they're coming! And people are running in all directions. Some people are trying to like distract them, like, oh, help, I'm being robbed, to distract the guards. And Ervig's like, keep running, go, go, go! So they're making these dex saves to see if they can keep up with Ervig and stuff like that. And I think most of the people took 1 or 2 points of fatigue during the course of this. But then they encounter these two thugs. They don't even fight them. What ends up happening is Hurdy-Gurdy was like, can I just charge right through them? So I had to make a strength check. He succeeded. So he just went right through him. He's like, can I just use my momentum to just bust down the door? I'm like, make another strength check. So he succeeds that too. So he just spearheads through these two guys, busts in the door. Everyone else follows behind him. They get inside. They shut the door. Ervig is like holding the door. Immediately, Harper pulls out his spell book, looks at this mirror, opens a portal to the mirror in his room. That may not be how that spell was originally meant to be used. I don't know if it's like only one person can walk through it, but for the way that I interpreted it, it says a mirror becomes a gateway to another mirror that you looked into today. So it becomes a gateway. So now there's this big portal. I didn't make a constraint like, oh, since it's a hand mirror, it's only like a little portal. I decided, you know, since he thought of this, I'm gonna let him go with it. So I just said it was a full-blown like portal that opened up. Ervig is completely surprised. Once they get in there, they realize that there's these two guys who were trying to like burn and destroy evidence, and they were just like, you know, I'm getting city guard, stopped them, and they're basically just like hands up, like looking crazy eyes at the portal, and they ended up like rapidly going in there and just basically taking anything and everything from this damn safe house and chucking it through the portal, including the two helpless dudes who were in there the whole time while Ervig is like bracing against this door. And like these guys are trying to bust in, and they're just failing their checks to get in. So they didn't even do any combat at all. They took everything, including the big cache of weapons that they wouldn't even normally have been able to carry. They just chucked that in there too. They chucked everything through there, like all the burning documents. They tried to like put it out, chucked it through. All the documents on the desks, chucked it through. Lockbox or whatever, chucked it through. They took everything, threw it through the portal, and then, you know, Ervig, Jimbo, and Hurdy-Gurdy rushed through, and then Harper was the last one to go through the portal, and it closed behind him. They completely circumvented the rest of the adventure, because I was gonna have like more thugs show up, so they would have been potentially fighting 5 dudes rather than just 2 like they were earlier, because they didn't even finish them yet. Depending on how they made out with that, I might have even thrown some other guys at them on the way if they weren't really challenged enough. But that was a smash and grab. Like they nailed it. Ervig was like super happy. I think Ervig even gave them a bigger bonus because of that, because it was just such a clutch move. I can't believe we were just laughing so hard at like how surprised people were. So we ended that, and then we just continued our session today. So we picked up from there. By this point, they're starting to get lots of money again. So they're like, can we go back to that one shop where we bought all this weird magic stuff from? I'm like, sure. So they go back to the shop, and I say, you know what? Let's just say the guy manages to get like 3 spell books for sale. I roll 3 random spell books, and so So they go in there and they're asking like if he has his spell books, and the guy's like, I in fact actually do have a spell book I have 3 of them. Please take a look at them. I can't believe the luck that these guys have. But the first one I rolled was number 66. Read mind. You can hear the surface thoughts of nearby creatures. So it starts off when the merchant brings up this book and they ask, what does that book do? The merchant's like, I'll show you. Opens it and then uses it to try to read the mind of Hurdy-Gurdy, basically collect his surface thoughts, mostly on how much money he has so that he can try to haggle him better. And so what ended up happening is Hurdy-Gurdy had like 100 some odd gold at this time, and so the guy was able to pick up on that because they were gonna start haggling for it. And then so the guy says, well, this is a tome of read mind, and I can tell that you've got quite a sum on your hands, and I'm willing to let it go for 100 gold. The Hurdy-Gurdy was like, oh, so he's using it to read my mind? That's not cool. And so Harper was like, I'm gonna start thinking murderous thoughts. Like, I'm gonna start thinking about just killing this dude. So just going through this whole interaction where this merchant can hear surface thoughts, and all of a sudden he's hearing these thoughts from Harper, and Harper's just looking at him like, I'm gonna kill you. And so he's I don't want to rob you entirely, so how about 85 gold? And they haggled it down. So then they're like, okay, well, what other books do you have? The next book they brought up was this let's see, what was the one I rolled? I think it was 100. It was X-Ray Vision. So the next book they ended up rolling was X-Ray Vision. Rolled 100, and Jimbo really wanted it, but he had already spent his money on a bunch of stuff. He didn't have enough money for it, so Harper really wanted it. So Harper haggled it down. I think he haggled it down to 75 gold as well, and took that. And then he's like, I'm gonna use the X-Ray Vision. So Harper uses it, and then Hurdy-Gurdy's like, while he's using that, can I like get his surface thoughts of what this guy's thinking? And I started just think, oh well, he hopes you don't use it to see his embarrassing tattoo he has right here. And then they're like, oh, what's the tattoo look like? And it's just like, I don't know, it looks like a deformed baby that might be a goblin. I was just spitballing, And so they were making fun of it. He's using this book. He was like, yeah, I'm gonna hold it up and like use it like I'm gonna look through it. And it was really funny. So they were like basically grilling this guy with the X-Ray Vision. And then the third spell book, what did I roll? I think it was like, what, 43? Oh yeah, 43. Illuminate. A floating light moves as you command. For this one didn't seem like it was too powerful of a book, so it seemed like it was pretty cheap. Jimbo actually wanted that one really bad, so ended up haggling it down to like 34 gold or whatever it was that Jimbo had left. So now they have these 3 books, and the first thing that Jimbo does with Illuminate is, the way that I said, is like, you open this book and this light shines up, and like it just instinctively obeys your every wish and desire. And Jimbo's like, I want to put the light right in the guy's face. So the light just basically gets stuck on the guy's face. He's trying to like block it out, but it's just right in his eyes. They're just messing with him. Ended up getting like thrown out of the shop. The dude locks the door behind him. So then they're like, we got these sweet books. We should like go find a cave. Okay. So they're on downtime again, since they finished this mission like super early, this whole smash and grab thing. They basically ran in, opened a portal, chucked everything through, went through the portal. It was like 10 a.m. by the time they're already done. They've got like 9 hours of daylight left, so they're just having the time of their lives just on the town buying spell books. So they had these new spell books and they wanted to use them. So Hurdy-Gurdy was using his just had his book open the entire time, just listening to all the surface thoughts of everyone nearby. And I figured that someone could be talking about how some miner named Barnabas had struck gold in his gold mine not too far from here. So Hurdy-Gurdy started kind of gleaning the location of where it sort of is, and they set out the main gate, went and found this mine outside the town, found it was barred, and then Hurdy-Gurdy still has his book open, still has the spell going, because it doesn't have a duration. So I just said it goes as long as you want it to. You just have to be holding the book. And he's like trying to catch surface thoughts. Now read mind says you can hear the surface thoughts of nearby creatures. So the surface thoughts he was catching were pretty distant. Again, it doesn't have like a radius or anything like that. So they show up at the mine. It looks like it's got a pretty limited, like a pretty ramshackle entrance. The door is currently barred, so they can't get in without breaking in. So Hurdy-Gurdy's sitting there listening to these thoughts, and the thoughts he was able to sort of gather were just some guy just thinking about different angles to hit this rock, to pry this piece of gold out. And then there was also another thought of something else in there. And the thought was just shiny. So they were like super sus about that. They ended up just busting in. I think Harper made a strength check to just bust the door down. Jimbo had his book with his light, just lighting the way, and they just sort of went down in there. Jimbo was having his light go far, and then basically the tunnel takes a sharp left, and the light kind of goes out of sight. So Jimbo brought it back, and then since Hurdy-Gurdy can kind of hear the thoughts, he shouts down the tunnel, "I'm getting city guard!" and just sort of sees how the thoughts change, and the thoughts change from, the thinking about mining this rock to, oh no, they've come for my gold. I have to hide things, pulling out a tarp and like hiding stuff and like moving crates. And then the other thought was just anticipation. So they were like really kind of worried about what's going on there. And then Harper pulls out his book of X-ray vision and starts looking around this cave. Again, it doesn't list a distance or anything. So at this point, they can hear the thoughts of what's going on. Harper can literally see through walls and see what's happening. So they were kind of chuckling because it's like, oh yeah, you see like a bunch of like gold and silver seams everywhere. In fact, like this tunnel that goes dead ahead, if they had just kept digging like 6 more feet, they would have hit a big gold seam right there. So they were kind of laughing about that. So then Hurdy-Gurdy is basically just shouting stuff down, like, I know you're trying to hide stuff from us. And then it's like, Harper ends up using his X-ray vision to see Barnabas, the miner, but he also sees the source of the other thought, which was just a little goblin I put down there. I just used the root goblin from the built-in bestiary and the Cairn rules here. The goblin was just there waiting for this whole seam to be dug up so he can take all the shinies. So the goblin's there chilling. So they end up like making their way through these tunnels. Again, Harper's got the X-ray vision. Hurdy-Gurdy's hearing surface thoughts. Jimbo's just got his light just ready to go. They get to like the final bend around there to where the actual area is. And their plan was they ended up convincing the guy like, hey, there's a goblin there. You have to get out. It's dangerous. So they end up convincing the miner to come out. They persuade him to get out of the mine to save himself, because what they want to do is they want to kidnap the goblin and they want to bring him back to that magic shop for some reason. That was what they wanted to do, because they could say, hey, this looks like your tattoo. So they really wanted to kidnap this goblin. So they were trying to think of like how to lure it out. So what was happening is that Hurdy-Gurdy was like listening to thoughts. Harper was X-ray vision looking at seeing what the goblin was doing. So they started chucking coins down the bend, and the goblin was really liking all the little jingly shine, tinkling sounds of money. Once there was like 8 or 9 coins that were tossed there, sprinted from his hidey way, started trying to gather up all his coins. And then Jimbo runs in, makes the light go in the goblin's face again, so the guy can't, so the goblin can't see anything. And then Harper puts his book away and runs up and takes his magic rope and ties up the goblin. They got him. And then they start searching through. They find the miner's stash of gold. I said, oh yeah, it's pretty rough chunks. It hasn't been like refined or anything yet, so there's still big chunks that's got some gold on it, but it's a lot of rock. They're like, yeah, I'm not gonna bother with that. We'll just come back and steal it later. So they end up leaving. The miner was waiting outside. Barnabas was. He's like, oh, there was a goblin. Oh, thank you for saving me. Did you steal my gold? And they're like, no, we didn't steal your gold. He's like, oh, thank you. Harper said, well, not yet. And the guy's like, what? Yeah, we're going to come back. We're in on your operation now. You got to pay us 20%. So they leave, and as they're leaving, they're hearing the guy nailing the door shut again, like trying to just make a barricade. They just kind of laugh. Anyway, they take this goblin into town. At first, they have him wrapped up in this tarp that they took from the supplies down there. The guards at the gate, of course, want to search him, even though they are guards. And they're like, oh yeah, we just took out this goblin from the mines. They're like, a goblin? So they take off the tarp. Oh, but it is a goblin. Holy cow, that's awesome. Yeah, carry on. You guys are doing great. So they take him to the magic shop. By this point, like the merchant that was in there was just kind of reading a book, looks up to see them enter and goes, what are you doing here? Because, they just basically embarrassed him with these books that he sold them. And they're like, oh yeah, we found this guy that looks like your tattoo. And they let the goblin go in the shop. And the goblin starts wreaking havoc. And the merchant merchant starts screaming. Harper was like, I want to act like I'm chasing the goblin, but I want to miss on purpose and try to grab random stuff and see if I can steal it. So he made a dexterity save. He succeeded. Ended up stealing a jar of fire oil. The goblin is destroying stuff. The merchant panics, like jumps over the counter, tries to go behind one of the guards. The goblin's just wreaking havoc. Harper's stealing stuff. Jimbo wants to do like this sweet combat roll maneuver and like scoop up something and like do the roll and then put it in his pack, but he failed his dex save. So he basically just makes this clunky crash as he misses and ends up like throwing I think it was I was just rolling random items, and what was it? I think it was a bunch of glass marbles. So he threw a bunch of glass marbles everywhere. The merchant's like, what are you doing? Hurdy-gurdy's trying to like add to the confusion, so he's like, watch out. He pushes the merchant away just to make more confusion so Harper can keep stealing stuff. And then the goblin uses this as an opportunity to make for the door. It succeeds on its dexterity save to try to get the door open, and it runs out onto the street. All the guards rush out to try to chase it. They end up going on a chase. Some other guards who were on duty patrolling the market district at the time were alerted by the sounds, came over to help, ended up cornering the goblin, and then they killed the goblin. And they're like, what was going on? And then basically Harper's like, yeah, this guy was selling goblins. The guards end up going over and arresting this poor merchant. So they just ruined that guy's whole life. That was today. They did that. And then we get to the final scenario, which was supposed to be a pretty in-depth search of Henson Halmore's estate. Well, let me tell you, when you have a book of read mind and x-ray vision, there's not many secrets that are missed. So what ended up happening, Ervig takes them to Henson Halmore's home. I have this warrant. I hope we can work together. Let's do this jointly so we can catalog everything that we confiscate. Do you have anything to declare? Henson Halmore's like trying to be really happy and jovial, like, you know, it's not that big a deal, I'm being searched. They get into the waiting room, like the first entrance, which is the first room to be searched. Ervig gives them the nod to start searching and is bewildered when they all pull out books. Hurdy-gurdy pulls out his book of read minds, takes a seat on one of the chairs and just has it open and it's just kind of like, you know, listening. Harper takes out his book and starts looking around at everything with his x-ray vision book, and then just to kind of fit in, Jimbo is like, yeah, I'm gonna open my book too. And since his book was of illuminate and makes light, and the light does whatever he wants it to do, he wanted it to just act like he was reading a book. I said the light didn't come this time. He didn't take a point of fatigue or anything. He just opens and was like just kind of reading a book. So that immediately threw Henson Halmore and his servant Tyus off. They're all like, thought you guys were searching. And Ervig's like, just let him work. Harper's going through and he's just basically seeing like everything. He's scoping out every single one of these rooms with x-ray vision, and Hurdy-gurdy is detecting thoughts the entire time. Tyus is just panicked. Halmore's just trying to keep everything together. Like he's just trying to keep up this facade of, oh, this is fine. Once Harper finishes his search of everything and he's located where everything is at, he closes his book and is like, all right, let's go, and just goes room by room and just instantly starts doing everything. Like he says, hey, open this up. Has him open one of the display cases, tosses the stuff out, instantly finds the false bottom, because x-ray vision, and finds these cryptic letters, finds a bunch of ledgers, goes into his room, finds that there is the mechanism that releases the bed so it can roll out of the way to reveal the underground safe, and just completely found everything within like, they were in and out in like 5 minutes. So this search was supposed to be like a super thorough search, like going room by room, overturning everything, you know, what is this, you know, what's under that, and Henson Halmore trying to like throw them off with idle chit chat and just trying to be as unhelpful as possible and stuff like that. No, they just went in there, found everything, took it out, and bam, they were done. So how the story ends is, unfortunately, Henson Halmore gets convicted. I guess not unfortunately, it's sort of unfortunate unfortunate either way, but gets tried by the magistrate, found guilty, has everything seized. Marco Mir ends up getting promoted and instantly like disbands the entire guard force and outsources all that to this mercenary group and raises a bunch of taxes. Now the players find themselves out of a job, and that's where we ended it. So I don't know if next session, if we're going to keep playing these characters doing random stuff, or if we're going to try to roll some second edition characters and play the Tangled Roots adventure that Entreri 84 made. I think we're going to try that next. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, that was my experience with my guards adventure with my sons and my friend. I thought it was pretty fun. This is the first adventure that I ever wrote. It was definitely a learning process, so that was super cool. But anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that randomness, and I would love to hear your stories if you decide to play this adventure. I would love to hear how everyone tackles the adventures and their experience with the adventure. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in whatever video I make next.